Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us here this morning. To begin, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Minister Ernie Hardeman, the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs.
Good morning, and thank you, Monte, and thank you everyone for being here today. Our farmers, greenhouse operators, and food processors are working hard to protect the health and safety of our sector's incredible agri-food workers during COVID-19. They do this while continuing to provide us with a steady and reliable supply of local, wholesome food. I also want to commend and thank all the workers who are so important to our province. Today, we're continuing on our efforts to provide safe and healthy workplaces for them. Since last spring, our government has taken many measures to help keep workers safe and provide the agri-food sector with the support they need. We have reinforced public health protocols. We have created the Enhanced Agri-Food Workplace Protection Program, a federal provincial financial support program to help farmers and agri-food operations take additional measures to improve the health and safety of the agri-food workers. We invested in increasing operational capacity of our food processors and providing funding for PPEs and workplace modifications. We have helped to address labor challenges. Together with our industry partners, we have developed the Prevention, Control and Outbreak Support Strategy for COVID-19 in Ontario's farm workers. And we are working with our partners and farmers to implement all 35 actions contained in that strategy. As we look ahead to this growing season, we are building on the knowledge and experience gained in 2020 to prepare for 2021. We all have our roles to play. Stepping up our agri-food workplace inspection is part of the province's continued efforts to raise awareness, to leave nothing to chance, to protect workers' health and safety and maintain our strong food supply. We appreciate the immense efforts farmers and agri-food operators have contributed towards protecting this sector. Now we ask everyone to keep up the collective day-to-day effort and make sure no one lets their guard down. With that, I will turn it back over to Minister McNaughton to talk about the expanded farm inspection campaign in more detail.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Minister Hardeman, for that. Nothing is more important to me than the health and safety of workers. Right now, many are doing their jobs remotely, but farm workers are needed on site every day to keep our grocery store shelves stocked. This is incredibly vital work that I can't thank them enough for doing. And in a few months, the busy outdoor growing season will begin again. This means we will be welcoming thousands of workers to our communities. Before I get any further, I want to be very clear about something. The safety of every worker in Ontario is my top priority. Notice I did not just say from Ontario. When you're here with a job to do, whether you were born here or come from overseas, your safety is my business, period. I want every worker to know Ontario labour laws apply to all workers, regardless of your passport. Last year, more than 12% of these workers caught COVID-19. More than 20 had to go to hospital. My heart goes out to all of these workers and to their families, especially the families of Bonifacio Eugenio Romero, Rogelio Munez Santos, and Juan Lopez Chaparro, who sadly passed away. These are tragedies that we must work harder to end. We are 10 months into this pandemic. By now, we know our stuff. All of us must do better. Inspections save lives, plain and simple. So today, I'm pleased to announce that we have ramped up inspections on farms with a focus on temporary foreign worker safety. Hundreds of inspectors, all trained in the necessary biosecurity protocols, are visiting farms and greenhouses to make sure employers are taking every precaution. Last year, we knew farmers needed extra guidance on how to protect workers so our visits focused on education. This year, we're enforcing and issuing orders, no excuses. We're acting on lessons learned, starting with accepting the Mexican consulate's generous offer to help our inspectors translate for Spanish working workers. We'll talk directly to workers about any concerns they have. Our inspectors are also looking for protocols like hand washing, physical distancing between workers, and the use of PPE where necessary. To help our farmers and workers, there are workplace safety resources available online at ontario.ca/COVID safety in multiple languages. To date, we've done 1,000 farming inspections. The good news is 98% of farms reported no illnesses after our inspections. This means that preventative measures are working. And this year, we're starting early, visiting farms before the growing season even starts and before most temporary foreign workers arrive. Lastly, while today is about protecting all workers in Ontario, in particular temporary foreign workers, I want to remind everyone that there is financial help for workers who need to stay home because of COVID. Thanks to an agreement between Prime Minister Trudeau and Premier Ford, there is over $1 billion available for workers to access 10 paid sick days. To date, we've been told 110,000 workers in Ontario have accessed this funding. We know that this program needs to work better. There's $800 million still left in the bank, and workers need this support. I spoke with my federal counterpart last week about what needs to be done to improve the federal paid sick leave program. I raised with her the need to pay workers faster, make it easier to access, and raise awareness of this program. We all agreed to continue working together to ensure workers get the support that they need. Combined with the provincial job-protected leave we introduced as our first action during COVID-19, people's jobs and incomes are protected. Our enemy may be invisible, but the consequences are not. For every worker, there's a family looking forward to seeing their father, mother, son, or daughter walk through the door again. And they are relying on the cooperation of employers and the diligence of our inspectors to make sure that happens. Thank you for your time today, and please, everyone, stay safe. We'll now take questions.
We'll go to the phone lines for questions. First questions, please.
A reminder to press *1 should you have a question. And your first question will be from Randy Rath, CHCH-TV.
Hi, Minister. I'm wondering, when you're doing these farm inspections, are you going to look at the housing for the migrant workers? Some of the bunkhouses that we've seen examples of are anything but safe. Are you going to ensure that they have proper living conditions?
Well, look, at this point in the pandemic, every farmer, every business knows the protocols that they should be following. As you know, Randy, the Temporary Foreign Workers Program is a responsibility of the federal government, and they are looking after living quarters in coordination with local public health units. Our inspection blitz that we're announcing today will focus on the workplace to ensure that these workers are protected while they're doing the job. So it's a coordinated effort. We continue to work closely with the federal government to ensure that every aspect of the daily lives of all these workers are protected.
Follow-up?
Okay, and also, when you're talking about paid sick days for workers, when COVID no longer is a problem, I assume those paid sick days will evaporate. What does your government have against giving workers paid sick days that aren't related to COVID? Isn't that something that you should be doing as a minister to keep workers safe?
Well, look, the health and safety of every worker in this province is my top priority, period. We introduced, as I said, the very first measure we introduced during COVID-19 was to ensure that no worker could be fired because of COVID-19. If they're in self-isolation, if they're in quarantine, if you're a mom or a dad that has to stay home to look after a son or a daughter because the schools are disrupted, you can't be fired for that. I also eliminated the need for sick notes. The Prime Minister and the Premier signed a deal over $1 billion of paid sick days, 10 paid sick days for workers in this province. We have to ensure that we continue to battle COVID-19, that people stay home when they're sick, and that they have access to these programs and these 10 paid sick days. That's my commitment. Let's all continue to work together to ensure that every worker knows that this program is available to them.
Next question.
From Jacob Barker at CBC Windsor. Please go ahead.
Hello. I was wondering about you mentioned these inspections that have been happening and the ramp up in inspections. In terms of how many you have done so far and how many you will do in the future, I'd be curious to know that number, as well as any issues that you have seen. You say that they have shown improvement or the low numbers after inspections happened, but what issues did you see when you were out there looking at farms?
Well, great question. I'm proud to say that our Ministry of Labour inspectors did 1,000 inspections to date on farms across the province, issued 400 orders, but we're not going to tolerate injustices against any worker. Businesses, including farm operations and agri-food businesses, know exactly what they need to do to ensure that COVID-19 doesn't enter workplaces. We're sparing no expense to protect the health and safety of every worker, regardless of their passport. So we're hitting the ground with hundreds of inspectors going out to farms. As I said, we have 200 inspectors trained on biosecurity protocols to ensure that farm workers are protected, and those inspections are ongoing every single day.
Follow-up?
I wanted to ask just about our region in particular, Windsor-Essex, as about nearly 10,000 workers are expected to be here by summer, and we did see over 1,000 cases of COVID-19 on these farms last year. I've been hearing a lot from local leaders just about the confusion that lies between government agencies and who to turn to for what. They've been calling for somebody to sort of take a lead role when it comes to all the different aspects of this. What do you think about that idea of having sort of one overarching body that can answer questions and point people in the right directions when they have concerns, whether it be a farm or a worker or members of the community with concerns?
Yeah, I'll let Minister Hardeman speak to this as well, but I want every worker in Ontario to know that if they feel unsafe at work, they can call the Ministry of Labour toll-free at 877-202-0008, and we'll be there to investigate and to support workers across the province. I can tell you we have more inspectorate today than at any point in Ontario's history when it comes to the boots on the ground inspecting workplaces. And our commitment is to ensure that every worker, including temporary foreign workers, are protected. But I'll let Minister Hardeman speak more to situations on farms.
Thank you very much for the question. And I think not only are we hearing a little bit about that now, that's what we heard a lot about when we had the first phase of COVID-19, where because it's an industry where there are so many, what should we say, different partners in the industry. The federal government is responsible for one part of it. The provincial government is responsible for another through OMAFRA. Another one is the Public Board of Health. Nobody seemed to know who to call. So we set up a committee with all the ministries together, all the workers together, including Ontario Health, to talk about what we needed to do. And that worked very well. And we intend very much to keep that going. In fact, we had a request of the local people to put together that one window approach to the challenges they were facing. And I can assure you that in our ministry, we are quite happy to be doing that liaison. We can't provide services during the pandemic, but we can get them in touch with all the other services that are available through both levels of government and with our health units and the Ontario Health. So we'll keep working with that. That's all part in our strategy that was developed with the sector together. We put it all together. The 33 recommendations we have in it, we will follow through on all of them to make sure that the things we learned in the first outbreak will be put to work in this one to solve the problem quicker and more efficiently and more effectively.
Next question.
From Sean Jeffers at the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Good morning, ministers. Minister McNaughton, I know you're talking a lot today about how, regardless of what your passport says, your citizenship, you're going to be guaranteed safety. I'm wondering, what that means in terms of the vaccine and whether temporary foreign workers who are working here in this province, on farms in this province, are going to be given access to the vaccine. Is that not something that should be done to guarantee their safety here?
Well, look, General Hillier is leading the vaccine rollout, as you know, Sean, here in Ontario. I'll have Minister Hardeman talk about the testing and the pilot projects that's been happening in the agricultural sector. But I can tell you, I'm really proud that we are sending out inspectors that are going to have translators for these workers who are coming to Ontario. I want all temporary foreign workers to know that sick pay through the federal government is available to them. And again, if any worker in the province feels unsafe at work, they're protected by Ontario labour laws and they can refuse unsafe work. But I'll turn it over to Minister Hardeman now to talk about the good things that are happening in agriculture when it comes to testing.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, obviously, the food supply chain will be one of the first places where we will massively introduce the rapid testing in the workplace to make sure that we prevent or try to prevent the spread of it in the workplace. That will include, and again, as the Minister McNaughton mentioned in his introduction remarks, we're not talking about workers from Ontario. We're talking about workers in Ontario, and the availability of the services for the people that are here, even though they're not here permanently, they are all covered by exactly the same services and protection that everyone gets in this province. If you're working in this province, you're covered by workers' compensation. All migrant workers are covered by workers' compensation. Everybody in this province is entitled to testing to try and prevent the spread of the COVID. The migrant workers are entitled to that exactly the same way. They're workers in Ontario and they're helping to get the food on our table, and we want to make sure we do everything we can to protect their health and safety.
Follow-up?
Respectfully, Minister Hardeman, I'm not sure that, frankly, either you or Minister McNaughton answered my question. If we are bringing these workers to Ontario to do this important work that the government has said, help the food supply chain, is it not Ontario's responsibility to protect them from the virus by vaccinating them?
Well, look, we continue to work with the federal government on temporary foreign workers coming to Ontario. As you know, Sean, the program is a responsibility of the federal government, and I've spoken a number of times with Federal Minister Marco Mendocino as early as this morning. We communicated actually, and they put in a really strong testing regime before temporary foreign workers come to Ontario. And again, I would urge the federal government to work as hard as possible to ensure that we get enough vaccines for all of the people and all of the workers here in Ontario.
Next question.
From Antonella Artuso at Toronto Sun. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Morning, ministers. Further to that comment, Minister McNaughton, about the testing regime, your government has been talking about closing the borders. It's been highly concerned about COVID being imported into the country. Can you expand on how you will ensure that no new cases are arriving in the country as a result of this?
Well, look, as I said, when it comes to migrant workers coming to Ontario, the federal government has brought in a new testing regime to protect the health and safety of these workers and the people here in Ontario. Look, it is a responsibility of the federal government to ensure that our borders are protected, to do everything humanly possible to prevent COVID-19 from coming in to not only Ontario, but Canada.
Follow up?
Thank you. We continue to see that low-paid essential workers seem to be carrying a disproportionate share of the COVID burden. And I'm wondering if you're concerned that perhaps your message that their jobs are protected is not carrying enough weight with them, or that perhaps the financial hit they would take as a result of staying home would be too significant for people who are already earning low wages.
Well, look, all levels of government continue to work together to ensure that the health and safety of workers is protected. I can tell you that we're sparing no expense when it comes to an enforcement measures. We have hundreds of inspectors into every type of workplace in Ontario, in particular those essential businesses that are open during this 28-day lockdown period. But it's the responsibility of every elected official, federally, provincially, and municipally, and businesses and associations, to let every worker know that they have access to this 10 paid sick day program through the federal government. As you know, I've reached out multiple times to the federal ministers. I know the Premier has spoken directly to the Prime Minister to ensure that the federal government is raising awareness about this program, to let workers know that $800 million is still in the bank account that they can apply. I've urged Minister Qualtrough to ensure that checks get out to these workers as quickly as possible, so when they're sick, they can stay home. And I have been assured by Minister Qualtrough, and I think this is positive news, that 80% of the payments are being directly deposited into workers' bank accounts around the 3-day period. Further improvements need to be made to this program, and we're happy to work with them to make that happen.
Next question.
Next question is from Sarah Motazade at Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister.
Morning.
Migrant workers were one of the first groups of workers outside of long-term care that saw massive outbreaks in this province. Why is it only 10 months later that you say your ministry is moving from education to potentially ramping up your enforcement efforts?
Well, look, I think, the stats speak for themselves. We've visited 1,000 farms and agri-food businesses, and after a proactive inspection, 98% of those farms had no COVID. But again, we're getting out early. We're getting out before most temporary foreign workers and the growing season begins here in Ontario to prevent COVID from entering farms and agri-food businesses and any type of business across the province. So we're working every day to ensure that farmers and all businesses are following the rules. As I've said, as early as this week, that we've now visited 36,000 businesses and done COVID-related investigations. We've shut down 61 businesses, 6 more about a week ago, and we won't hesitate to shut down any workplaces that are unsafe.
Follow up?
How effective will workplace inspections be if the workers have not even arrived and you're unable to see how workplace practices are actually impacting workers on the job?
Well, look, we're going out to farms before many of these workers arrive here in Ontario. But make no mistake about it, when they arrive, the Ministry of Labour and the federal government and local public health units will be visiting these places every single day.
Last question.
From Doug Schmidt at the Windsor Star. Please go ahead.
Good morning, ministers. Minister Hardeman mentioned about a one-window approach, but it wasn't quite clear when that might be implemented. You said we'll keep working on that. The mayors from Essex County recently sent a letter to the province and the federal government just begging for some kind of somebody to take the lead, that whenever municipal leaders, call for help and action, they're pointed in different directions. And we heard a bit of that this morning with mentioning that the housing situation is something for the feds to deal with and workplaces of the province. It's difficult for local politicians to figure out who's responsible, and we're just hearing about the thousands of workers that are anticipated coming. But here locally in Essex County, we already have more than a dozen farm workplaces that are suffering outbreaks, and the season has barely begun. And so I'm just wondering, when might we see this one window approach, and at what point will there be where there's a problem where a local leader can just simply call a number and say, we've got a problem here, can we get action?
Well, look, I'll let Minister Hardeman address this as well, but I can tell you I speak to many local leaders in southwestern Ontario and in the Niagara region as well, where many of these operations are located. I can tell you I speak regularly with Federal Minister Marco Mendicino to ensure that there's a coordinated approach. The federal government are going to have boots on the ground inspecting bunkhouses in coordination with public health units, and we're proactively sending hundreds of inspectors out to farms before workers arrive and when workers are here to ensure that on the day jobs they're protected and these work sites are protected. Minister Hardeman, anything else to add?
Thank you very much for that question, and I think Mr. McNaughton explained it fairly well. That it's about governments working together to make sure that the solution is theirs. And when I mentioned the one window approach, it was at that time the Ministry of Agriculture and Food has what should we say, boots on the ground, going from farm to farm for other reasons, for the growing of the crops and so forth, working with the agriculture community. And so they were there, so we just set it up that they could call us, and then we could make sure that we followed up with the right people that were involved and got everybody together to solve the crisis on the ground. I think it's important to recognize presently, if there is someone that has an outbreak, it doesn't matter who is reporting it. The local board of health is the place to report it. They are the ones that follow up on outbreaks. If more needs to be done to assist everybody that's on the ground, we put the same team together that we had before to do that, to make sure that the services that are available are communicated to the community. And particularly we found the first time around, they need to be communicated in more than one language in order for all the people that were involved to be able to avail themselves of what we were providing. So I can assure you that the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs is there to give whatever assistance we can for the community. And I can tell you that the local mayors, I know them personally, I've met with them many times on this issue just for that purpose, to make sure that we all knew what was available, and we all knew the best way we could do best thing we could do to get it on the ground, get it working, and keep our workers safe and working. I think everybody has that same interest to make sure that with workers that are unable to work, it stops the food chain. So everybody has the same interest to make sure we keep everybody healthy, keep everybody running to get the food on the kitchen tables.
Follow up?
Yeah, Mr. McNaughton, you mentioned about 200 inspectors that are going to be out and about this year. How many were out inspecting farms last year?
Well, last year we had about 400 or 450 inspectors out across all different types of workplaces, including, as I said, 1,000 farm inspections. But I can tell you that we've doubled down on enforcement efforts over the last number of months. We've formed multi-ministry teams where 200 enforcement officers from right across different ministries are joining up with our Ministry of Labour inspectors, the 450 of those inspectors, to go out to every type of workplace. We've, as you know, launched a big box blitz where 2 weeks into the big box blitz, where we've been to 1,000 big box stores in different regions of the province. We're continuing to go into distribution centers, to warehouses, to factories. We're going on to farms to protect every single worker in this province. Look, we're heading in the right direction. Our numbers are trending in the right direction, but all of us have to remain more vigilant today than at any point during COVID-19 so we can get through this pandemic and get back to life as normal. Great. Thank you, everyone.